Now we're going to learn to use some formulas that are in Excel. Excel has a lot of formulas. Let's make a copy of the data because you really don't ever want to do anything with your original data. So before we start messing with formulas, I am going to hold the control key down and make a copy. And I'll label this copy. And I think I'll label this original so I know this is my original data if I need to go back to it. And you just never know when you're going to make a mistake. Now, we will work on the copy. And we're going to look at how to compute a class average, which we'll put here, how to count the number of students, the number of students who have a passing grade, the max, min, and the percent of students who are passing, and the average. So to start, we're going to get the average of the test scores for each student, and we're going to put in this column. All formulas start with the word, or with equals. If you leave off the equals, it's just going to put whatever you type in the cell without doing a formula. So equals average, and the formula for average is the word average. Open a parenthesis. Now what we're doing is we're telling it, I want you to average with that word. Then the parenthesis, because we're going to tell it what to average. And if we drag across the 3 test scores, it writes for us. You can see up here it said D2 to F2, and that's where the test scores are. We're in row 2, and they go from D to F. You can write that yourself, but it's always easier just to click and drag. And then close the parenthesis and hit return. And now if you want to see and make sure that you got the right stuff, if you click up here in your window where the formula shows, it will highlight for you what numbers you're averaging. And then click at the end, return back out. So there's our average. If you can get hold of that little corner, you can pull this down and see the formula updates. It goes from D2 to D3, 4, 5, so it automatically increments for you. So you only have to write the formula once and then you pull down. Now we got the average for each student, and let's take a look at here. This student didn't take that test. If you were to put a 0 in there, right now their average is 52, but we are averaging from D7 to F7. If we put a 0 in there, the average goes down. So that tells you Excel is not counting that. It's just if there is no score, it's not treating a blank like a 0. And that's important to know, because if you have some policy where if they don't make it up, it needs to become a 0, you would have to go put that in there in order for the average to not just be for the existing numbers. It will ignore the blanks and do the average correctly. Here, that 78.5 is the average of the 2 scores that the student does have. Now let's say you don't like how this looks and you're going to share this with some other people, and you know they're not going to like seeing all those decimals. There's several different ways that you can get rid of them, but here's a good formula to know. Let's say we want to round these averages. I clicked in here and the formula shows up here in the formula bar. That's what this is called. I click after the equal sign, and I'm going to add a formula for rounding. So I write the word round. In formulas, always you have to put in parentheses the argument of the formula. So open parentheses. I want to round the average. Go to the end and put comma. And how many digits do I want to round it to? Well, if we want to round it to 2 digits, you put a 2. And we could pull that down. And then they're all rounded to 2 digits. Could be you want to round it to no digits. You want it to be integers, which is what I like to see because people don't like to see decimals. And now Excel is not losing the numbers. Even though it's displaying the rounded version, you can revert back because the Excel has all the information. It has every decimal place still in there. You could go back to 7 and you still have it. So let's put it to 0. And that will turn those into integers. Okay, now we're going to learn another formula. The formulas are what make Excel so incredibly handy and also fun. Let's say we want to create a variable that will tell us whether the average is a passing or failing average. And we want it to be based on this number because like when these students make the test up, this could change and we don't want to have to go in and change it by hand. And that's one of the benefits of having a formula in there. So what we want to do, let's say 60 is passing and below 60 is failing. So we're going to write a statement that will put a P if this number is above 60 or above, and an F if this number is less than 60. Now the formula for that is an if statement, which should make logical sense because it's going to be give me a P if one thing, give me an F if something else. So equals, because formulas always start with equals, and then you don't have to use caps. It'll change it to caps if you don't do that, but the formulas are all written in caps and they'll switch if you don't. So equals if, and then open parentheses. Here it's telling you what the arguments are, but sometimes that won't make any sense to you. So I'm just going to show you how. If, and then open parentheses, if this number, so you click there, so if that number changes, it's a variable. If this number is greater than 59, if that's the cut. Now let's say 60 is the cut. If it's greater than 60, okay, that's the logical test. That's what it's telling us here. And then you put a comma. These are called arguments. And they always have commas between them. And comma, and then what value do you want if that statement is true? If you're putting a letter in instead of a number, or you could write a word, but any alpha, you need to put quotes. Quote, let's have a capital P, quote, comma, okay, that was our true, and see how this became bold? Because now that's the argument we're about to put in there. What do we want it if this logical test is false? If that's false, we want F for fail, but it's got to be in quotes because it's alpha. And then close the parenthesis. And this gave us a P. I want this centered. Good thing I had my formatting unit. So I'll center that. And I can get a hold of that little square and pull this down. And see, it's here, it updated to G3. This one's looking at G4. It's looking at G5. So, and then kind of eyeball it to make sure it's right, because you will make mistakes. There's just no way to never make mistakes. So are the P's where you think they should be, and the F's are, yes, they are. Oh, here's another way we can check it. Let's do this. Let's filter. Let's put a filter on. And I'm going to check all the passes. And these should all be 60 or greater, and they are. Okay, that's just a little check. And I guess we should check and make sure that the fails are all below 60, and they are. Okay. So, looks like we did it right.